After Dricus Du Plessis' big win over Israel Adesanya last weekend, the conversation about Dricus has stopped being about, oh, he loses to this guy. It's more about who can actually beat him at this point, because he has proven to be very, very good. So the expectations now for Dricus are higher than they've ever been. And now people are just looking for opponents that they can choose to match him up with that would beat him. So I've compiled a tier list of about 10 fighters from welterweight to light heavyweight who people are discussing as potential opponents for Dricus Du Plessis. I've not just added every top 5 opponent from middleweight and light heavyweight to the list. It's all people who are compelling opponents for Dricus. Right, so I'm not going to talk about Nikita Krylov or Jared Cannonier. Right, we don't really need to see where they lie on this tier list. We're going to start off with Dricus' most recent opponent, just to give you an idea of where all the other fighters lie on the list in terms of their chances. And we have Israel Adesanya. I've heard some conflicting arguments about that fight, Adesanya versus Du Plessis. I've heard Adesanya fans say that he was winning every round up until the submission, and it was basically a fluke. They say the same thing about the pereira fights. They're always going to cope about that sort of thing. And you get the Dricus fans who think Dricus is winning every round. The most realistic perspective is it's 2-1 either way, really. Right. Round 3 was pretty clear for Adesanya. Round 1 and 2 you can argue for either guy. But it was a competitive fight while it lasted. Much like a lot of Du Plessis fights, Adesanya's not alone in the fact that he made it close with Dricus in the first few rounds of the fight. Right, Brunson made it close. Darren Till won round 2 very clearly. So it's not really a unique achievement. One thing I don't really understand is, in defence of Adesanya, I will say that I don't think he's washed. I'm hearing a lot of people say that Adesanya, because he's losing now, that he's a washed fighter. He's over the hill. He's on the downslide. I thought he looked pretty good in the Du Plessis fight, to be honest, especially with the wrestling. He looked very strong, in my opinion, defending takedowns and getting up. And striking-wise, right, he targeted the body very well. He countered Du Plessis when necessary. We didn't see anything that we haven't seen from Adesanya before. We didn't see him get hit by things he wouldn't have been hit by before. We've seen him get hit by jabs by Vettori over and over again. We've seen Blachowicz outstrike him clearly. We've seen Strickland outstrike him clearly. So Dricus landing punches on him shouldn't be a surprise to people. In terms of his chances in a rematch, obviously the age favours Dricus. He's about 31. Adesanya's 35. You can only really expect Adesanya to go downhill from here. I'll put him in the solid chance here. He can win the fight in a rematch. It's possible, I just don't think it'd happen. Moving on to the most commonly talked about opponent for Dricus next. That is his second to last opponent, Sean Strickland. Now, I'm going to put him just above Adesanya because obviously their fight was a lot closer than Adesanya's fight with Dricus. I don't think Sean was robbed in their first fight. I think anyone saying that either guy won clearly is just being ridiculous. It was as close as a title fight gets, really. Right? So, realistically, he could be on the 50-50 tier on this list, but I think just the fact that we've seen him lose to Dricus, he's definitely above Adesanya. He's going to be the highest guy on this tier, but there's no intrigue about the fight. We know how it plays out mostly. I'd be very surprised to see Strickland win clearly in a rematch. I think either way it would just be very close again. I don't think either guy's moved on that much from the first fight. We move on to a man who has beaten both of these men in the solid chance tier list. We have Alex Pereira. Now, if it was a striking battle, right, he'd be in the top tier, absolutely, no question. But as we know, grappling is a thing in MMA. Right, so you can't just say, look at how Dricus throws punches. Pereira's going to knock him out with a counter hook. People were saying the same thing for Adesanya, and that never happened. And I think Pereira's got worse grappling than Adesanya. But what shifts the fight in Pereira's favour more than it did for Izzy, I think, is just the fact that he's clearly bigger than Adesanya is, naturally stronger, and much more dangerous on the feet. Unless Dricus just gets the takedown immediately, like Blachowicz did, there is going to be a serious amount of danger for Dricus on the feet. I do lean slightly in the favour of Dricus in this fight just because of the grappling. We've seen people like wrestle here all the time, right? Michaeladis did it. Bruno Silva got 2 takedowns. Adesanya got a takedown. Blachowicz got a takedown. Prohaska got a takedown. A lot of people, if they try, will get a takedown on Pereira, and I think Dricus would be the best grappler that Pereira has faced. So, and the submission threats there, we could see just a round 1 submission pretty easy from Dricus Du Plessis on Pereira, but the sheer danger of Pereira on the feet is why it's a 50-50 fight. I don't know if he's going to get the takedown immediately. I don't think it'll be a start to finish wrestle clinic. I think there will be some danger there, so it is a 50-50 fight. Very interesting. Would like to see it. Moving on to another past opponent of Dricus, we have Robert Whittaker. He's in the low chance tier list, not just because he lost the clearest out of Strickland and Adesanya, but simply because of the style, right? I don't think you can afford to be chinny against a guy like Du Plessis who relies on his power and his natural strength to win his fights. Right? You can be as technical as you want, you can be as absolutely perfect as you want, but in MMA it does take one punch, and if you have a bad chin, it's very rough for you, especially if you're in there with a world-class opponent who's got serious power in his hands. He can just take one punch and you're done for. That's how the first fight played out. That's how I see the second fight playing out. Whittaker would once again be outstriking Dricus overall, but just one punch lands, one stupid punch, spinning overhand heel kick, whatever it is. Dricus will land something at some point on Whittaker in a rematch, and I don't have any interest in seeing it. As much as I love Whittaker, their first fight ended like this, with Whittaker literally on his knees, right, in the homeless position, right. Not a good look for him at all. We move on to Robert Whittaker's next opponent, who's also going to be in the same tier as him. We have Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I think this is a terrible matchup for Khamzat Chimaev personally, because when you look at Dricus Du Plessis as an opponent, and then you look at how Chimaev has success in his fights, Chimaev as a fighter is very successful with a strength advantage, right? We saw it clear as day when the levels of competition shifted from Li Jingliang, John Phillips, Gerald Meerschaert to Kamaru Usman, right? Kamaru Usman, even though he's not a middleweight, he's a strong guy, very strong guy, good wrestling. And Chimaev had a very, very hard time getting takedowns on him past round 1, right? Dricus Du Plessis is a lot stronger than Usman, a lot naturally bigger than Usman. Not only is his size a factor, he's got submission threat as well. Dricus has a very good guillotine, which could end up submitting Khamzat in their fight, right? Not only that, Chimaev has the worst gas tank out of the two of them. Dricus is known for having a weird gas tank. Like, he looks like he's slowing down, then he gets back in the fight. Chimaev, if he slows down, I do not see him getting any second wind. I think he will just keep slowing down. And just a big punch will land on his face, and it'll be over from there, I think. Very bad matchup for Chimaev. Moving on to another fighter who is originally from that region, we have Nassourdine Imavov. Imavov is pretty good. Stylistically, he may cause issues to Dricus just because he's got good movement, good footwork. He's elusive, he can grapple. He's got some power in his hands, which is what you need to beat Dricus Du Plessis. But to me, Imavov is just a worse Adesanya. What can Imavov do that Adesanya couldn't do? I guess grapple, but he's not going to out-grapple Du Plessis. That's not going to happen. So you just get a guy with worse technique, worse defence, worse cardio. Much worse cardio, by the way, if you remember the Joaquin Buckley fight. He's improved overall, but I don't think he's improved that much. Right, it was a weird stoppage versus Cannonier. He went the distance with Dolidze, which... How are you not putting away Roman Dolidze? Right, I don't get that. So, Imavov, low chance. Moving on to our first opponent on the will beat Dricus Du Plessis part of the tier list. We have Jiri Prohaska. I had to use that image of him. It's funny as hell. Anyway, Yuri Prohaska, the reason he beats Dricus Du Plessis, and I'm very convinced of him doing that, is because when you think about it, Yuri Prohaska is Dricus Du Plessis, but bigger and more powerful, right? Now, while Prohaska might lack the grappling that Dricus has, I think Dricus is a better grappler than he is a striker. I doubt the grappling's a factor in this fight against a proper big 205 opponent like Yuri Prohaska. The thing with Dricus Du Plessis is, as hard as he is to beat, if you just have power, that's a very winnable path to victory, right? We've seen one of his only wins to Roberto Soldic. Soldic is just a massive, roided up Eastern European man with a lot of power in his hands. And that's how he beat Dricus, right? Because Dricus isn't hard to hit. He blocks a lot of punches, but he's there to be punched in the face, basically. He's very ploddy. Yuri Prohaska, he's going to find the mark on Dricus Du Plessis very easily, in my opinion. And that's where the prediction comes in. Because I see Prohaska just having no issues landing his big straight punches, his massive uppercuts, his flying knees, whatever. Dricus barely moves his head at all. And I think below heavyweight, I'd say he's the most dangerous fighter offensively. Because there's so much variation of attacks, so much power, so much speed, so much fearlessness from Yuri. I think the only person to match Dricus's fearlessness is Yuri Prohaska, right? He does not care at all. He doesn't feel any pain. He's going to walk forward. He's going to take all your punches. I think Yuri knocks him out in round one. Moving on to our first fighter on the note here, we have Belal Muhammad. Now, something you may be saying is that why is Belal Muhammad below all these other fighters on the tier list? He's a champion, he's pound for pound at this point. Imavov's never won a title, Chimaev's never won a title. Some of the fighters that we're going to see on this tier list aren't even top 5 yet. However, I'm seeing, not really people, but I'm seeing Belal Muhammad himself say that he could beat Dricus Du Plessis. I don't see any chance at all that happens, right? No chance in hell, right? Because I think the worst thing he can be in a fight versus Dricus Du Plessis is smaller than him, right? Considerably smaller than him. And unless you've got a monstrous chin, like unreasonable, uncrackable chin, there's no way you're surviving Dricus Du Plessis is someone who's like 25, 30 pounds lighter than him naturally, right? And that's what he is. Belal Muhammad is very small compared to Dricus Du Plessis, right? I think Belal has no chance of getting a takedown on him. Dricus would have no issues getting a takedown on Belal Muhammad. I think a punch from Dricus Du Plessis would just throw Belal across the cage, right? And Belal's power just doesn't exist really, so I don't see any path to victory for Belal whatsoever. There's no finishing ability. The wrestling won't be a factor against a bigger opponent. He can't defend takedowns against Dricus, who's that much bigger than him. It's very unwinnable for Belal Muhammad, right? I'd love to see it just to see how one-sided it'd be, but I think even Belal knows that he'd probably lose that fight. We move on to quite a controversial pick on the list. We have Bo Nickel, right? Now, it's hard to place Bo on the list. You could argue that he shouldn't be on the list at all because he's not fought a top 15 opponent. All these other opponents on the list have fought at least a top 5 opponent in their weight class. Bo Nickel hasn't even broken the rankings yet. But in terms of potential, it's there because I see Bo as one of the only people on this list who can get a takedown on Dricus. If his striking's not up to speed, it'll be dangerous for him because there will be moments on the feet and there will be chances for Dricus to catch him. The thing with Bo Nickel is the potential, because when you think about it, he's only started MMA about a few years ago, right? And he's already done bits, really. Most people at his amount of fights are still regional fighters. They're still picking up losses on the regional scene, but we're criticising Bo Nickel for not finishing Cody Brundage immediately, right? Fighters usually take years before they take a Cody Brundage level opponent. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm defending Cody Brundage, right? He's not good. For the UFC anyway, he's not good. But Bo Nickel, for the amount of time that he spent doing MMA to fight Cody Brundage at this stage that he's in his career is impressive. And I think people are overlooking that. They are also overlooking the potential in a guy who has only just started MMA, has clearly picked it up pretty soon, who can only improve his striking, can only improve his jiu-jitsu, can only improve his kicks, his boxing, his clinch work, everything in MMA. So I can't put him higher than Low Chance just because we don't know enough about him right now. But he deserves a mention on the list because at some point I do believe he'll be up there. And he's got a lot of potential. We move on back up the list to Magomed Ankalaev. Now, some of you people might be upset that he's not at the very top of the list. He is a Dagestani, so you're going to defend him either way. But let's be real, right? Thiago Santos dropped him, right? With one leg. That's an old Thiago Santos. And he got put on his ass in that fight. Yeah, so his chin's not great. There's a reason he fights the way he does, right? He's a technical, leg-kicky point striker who also likes to grapple, right? He's not throwing it down like Yuri Prohaska is. He's not a dangerous striker the same way Pereira is. He's dangerous, he's got power, he can grapple, which is why he's in the close fights here. But I don't like his chin. That's all it is. I don't think his chin's that good. I think Dricus would land on him at some point. Whether it's enough to get him out of there is a different question, but it is a very hard fight to call, in my opinion. Because stylistically, as a striker, I think Ankalaev is a bad matchup for Dricus Du Plessis. I think being on the outside is a great idea against Dricus. Because of how far away Dricus throws his punches, I think being on the outside is a good idea for him. Using kicks, keeping distance. But Dricus doesn't really care about all that, to be honest. He does just blitz in, throwing whatever he feels like. So there's a chance Dricus just catches him. There's a chance Ankalaev outstrikes him over 5 rounds. Who knows? Hopefully Ankalaev doesn't win, because fuck Ankalaev, he's boring as hell. No one likes him. We move on. Last fighter on the list, we have Alexander Rakic. Speaking of boring, Rakic is here. Right. He's on the same tier as Ankalaev because I actually do believe that Rakic will beat Ankalaev. You can come back to this list in a few months' time and say, hey, you thought Rakic would beat Ankalaev after Ankalaev wins. Or you can call me a guru because Rakic ended up beating Ankalaev, who knows. Either way, they're both pretty similar in the way that they are bad style matchups for Dricus Du Plessis. Rakic fights on the outside. Super dangerous leg kicks. I think he has the most powerful leg kicks in MMA right now. Strong wrestling. Same issue as Ankalaev, really, though. He doesn't have a great chin. Dricus he's the worst fighter to fight if you have a bad chin, really. That's what it is at the end of the day. If you have a bad chin against Du Plessis, he might land one punch and it'll just be over from there. So, Rakic, Ankalaev, similar fighters, same division. This is my tier list. Disagree if you want. Goodbye.